Hey y'all, panic attacks, lack of sleep, insomnia, shingles, and a needed leave of absence. Those are the things that I had to deal with while I was in court the last 2 years. Man, look, court will compromise your health if you don't get it together. And like I just shared, I wish that, I don't know that there's a way to forecast how something is going to affect you or how your body is going to respond to everything that you're going through, but I definitely learned new ways in which my body responded to stress, and court definitely introduced all of those elements to me. So one thing I will start with is just the lack of sleep. One thing court will do to you if you are super engaged in everything and the facts of your case is cause you to ruminate and think and question and wonder and worry. You're going to worry so much about what is going on and all of the facts of your case that it's probably going to cause you to lose sleep. I remember having insomnia so many days, like literal zombie mode, because I just could not shut my mind off. And the worry of the case consumed me so much that I just couldn't shut down. Meditating wasn't working. I love yoga and do that. That wasn't working. Nothing was working. So the lack of sleep was something that I think catapulted everything else that I was experiencing because I was so tired. So being tired also is going to put a hindrance on everything else that your body is responding to because you need sleep. Of course, we know the typical 7 to 8 is ideal. If you get more, it's great. If you get less, that's kind of choppy. And if you are getting less than that consistently, you are going to suffer. But let me explain about the panic attacks. So I used to always have panic attacks like through college and then in my marriage. Like my marriage catapulted my panic attacks again just because I felt like I was always walking on eggshells and I was always nervous and I felt like trying to be the perfect whatever, wife, whatever, partner, money, all these things were in the way of like me being my true self. So any argument or any like emotional turmoil that I was experiencing in my marriage will literally have me in a panic attack. And I also think birth control was contributing to that as well, because hormonally I just felt all over the place, but also my emotions were just super heightened throughout my entire marriage that I was just like, yo, what's going on? And I never really questioned it until I was in therapy. And then my therapist was just like, okay, when are you having these panic attacks? And it was always when I was entering the home after, whatever long day and not understanding what to expect from my ex-husband. So that was already a part of the equation when I was married. But when I left my marriage, panic attacks were gone. It was a different type of attack, right? I was a new mother and dealing with postpartum depression and all of these things. So because of that, I thought about like, dang, entering to this court case, I coupled the sleep and then just the worry of just being anxious and shaky and like slow, like not being able to breathe sometimes, like my heart having palpitations. It was so scary, and it was truly panic attacks because of all the worry and stress that I was undergoing. And as I alluded to in the previous videos about my court case, like there were so many elements that were triggering and re-triggering everything that I was feeling, what I experienced based on the new facts of the case, that some old wounds and scabs that I think were healed. They didn't even have a Band-Aid on them. They started to creep back into my world and in my mind, and I started to then think like, oh my God, am I heading back down this road again? I did so much to heal and and la la la. So all of those things started to heighten my panic attacks again. So that was something that I didn't see coming because I worked really hard to get past that. And like I mentioned, when I was, trying to combat the lack of sleep, panic attacks were starting to diminish once I started meditating and doing yoga, and then ultimately left my marriage. So that all of those things coming back really scared me, because I did not like who I was during those moments. I didn't like who I was becoming during those moments, and it scared me to be going back to that after I worked so hard to heal and work through that, and especially being a new mother. So that was wild, okay? So then, towards the end of my case, things financially just got so out of hand. I had to liquidate my 401k pretty much completely in order to help pay for the court case, because I couldn't just like not have my attorney on board anymore. Like, she was so invested in my case and she was excellent, but she wasn't cheap. She wasn't expensive, but she wasn't the cheapest route either. So I paid for the quality of her service. So boom, that then turned into like all of the stress that came with the interrogatories, the deposition, the questioning, the testimonials, the getting ready for trial. The trial preparation was so stressful. Y'all, like, I don't even know how I was able to survive everything at once. So let me give you some insight as to what was going on in my life during the time of the trial prep, because I was in and out of court, for a year, and then it was determined that we would have to go to trial because everybody involved on the other side was not being reasonable or agreeable to anything, right? So because of that, we ended up going to trial, and the trial prep really like did me in a little bit, and then the actual trial just took everything and escalated everything for me. So the trial prep, this is why in the last video that I shared about like what to do and how to get ready as you're entering court and what to expect, this is the part where I think this benefited me, that I was so organized and had so many things documented already. But then getting those things put together, I shared the trial binder a few videos ago. That trial binder, everything comes from me because I am the person, bringing the case forward to the court via my attorney. So I had to provide all of this evidence and all of these supporting documents, which is a lot, right? Like, it's so much. So that, the questioning, the having to revisit the case over and over, the reason why we're here, the domestic violence, like that has to keep replaying over and over. It does something to you. It really does. So the trial prep was one thing, right? And then when we actually got to the trial, hearing that woman's testimony and her flipping the script and her recanting of everything that, was shared really did me in. And what the result of that was basically that everything that I was fighting for as it related to who cares for my son and the protection and the communication, I really couldn't fight much of that because, like I mentioned, he ended up having a baby by the girl that brought all of these domestic violence and drug abuse allegations forward. So because of that, the court was like, we really can't take away or restrict anything. And honestly, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. The man doesn't care about any type of agreements or anything that we have. So in conjunction with that, and then the ruling, although a good percentage of things worked in my favor, that particular part did not in what I wanted to put in place as barriers and boundaries. And then hearing her just lie and talk through everything, she just, oh my God, it was just so traumatic that during the case, I felt myself hot. And I felt like I was going to faint. And thankfully, this trial ended up being virtual. The previous intended trial was in person, but we were in negotiation for 4 hours, and we ended up having a trial. And then months later, we ended up having a trial anyway because people wanted to play games. So that virtual trial, that ruling, everything kind of just was it was like a tornado. It was like a tornado over me. And I was then faced with, okay, this is it, the finality of everything, which is great, but then an exhale, right? And After the trial ended and my attorney and I debriefed like for 20 minutes after that, I find myself like boo-hoo crying, like just I don't know, overwhelmed with everything, and then angry and resentful and sometimes feeling hateful of the process and the system. But at the same time, my attorney, like I mentioned, she was very emotionally intelligent, and she reminded me that I fought for my son and myself as much as I could. And she reminded me of the things that I was able to benefit because of the fight that I put forth. And then she also, just let me know, like in court, there's no win or losses, because somebody's always going to lose something or win something. So just focus on like the 10 things that I won versus the 2 things or the 3 things that I lost. And that put it in perspective. But then the stress that came after that, let me tell y'all, like 2 days after I went through that like episode of incessantly crying and like screaming, even not during the case, of course, like after I hung up with everybody and that was done, I screamed so loud in the house because I was just so overwhelmed. And that then turned into me not realizing how much I was holding in, because a week later, I got shingles. And this is how I found out. So I have a small toddler. So I'm thinking that, the itching around my eye and the redness and all that stuff is because maybe I got pink eye. But then I'm like, he doesn't have pink eye, so maybe I got it from whatever randomness that, was around me, right? So boom, I think I have pink eye. And then a day or 2 goes by and I'm talking to my best friend and she's just like, girl, send me a picture of what this looks like, because how is this still a problem? And she was just like, yeah, I don't know, I think you need to get that checked out, because initially I was just doing drops and doing the things, but I had to go get that checked out, because then there was like a bubbling of like all these little clusters of bumps around my eye, and it did not look like pink eye anymore. So I went to urgent care and they were like, oh, are you under a lot of stress? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm okay today. And they were like, yeah, you have shingles. And I was like, what? Mind you, I'm in my 30s, okay? Shingles are like allegedly supposed to be for older people, but I learned now a lot of general physicians and doctors are seeing shingles in much younger people. So y'all, I had shingles. And it was so painful. Like I could barely blink. I was so uncomfortable. And then, like I work in the beauty industry, in the tech world, and I have to be visible. So I was all self-conscious about that. So y'all, I had shingles, and of course I got my medication and things like that. But then when I spoke to my therapist and my general physician, both of them said, Dina, you are holding way too much in your body. And I didn't realize how much I was just holding on to whatever I was feeling. Like, although I was in therapy, although I go to church, although I talk to my friends, although I talk to my mama, although I confide in, whatever and whomever, I still was holding a lot in. And everything that I was not releasing was basically attacking my body. Like my body was responding to all of the stress that I was holding in. So me getting shingles, the panic attacks, insomnia, all of those things were a result of everything that I was holding in just to like hold it together and show up. And that was detrimental to me because it ultimately cost me my health. So then I also, during the case, there was a point where things just were they were too overwhelming, like beyond overwhelming. And y'all, my therapist was like, Dina, I think you need a leave of absence. And I'm just like, yeah, but I don't have anything wrong with me. Like, I'm physically okay. They're not going to approve it, da 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 da. And she was like, I don't think you realize how much you have going on, and you are on the verge of a mental breakdown. I see it on your face. I hear it in your voice. I need you to realize that you need a break. My therapist ended up doing a write-up for me, and then she basically said, hey, y'all need to give her time off because her mental health is at risk. So I was on leave of absence for about a month during, I think it was the first year of my court case. And at that time I was working for a tech company, and it took me talking to someone in confidence about what I was going on for them to say, hey, you need to raise this further. Okay, and then the HR department was able to find a way to make sure that I got paid leave without compromising, any of my paycheck or compensation, and then also just ensuring that I was covered under my state law. So if you ever find yourself in a position to have leave or anything like that, just know that a lot of states have their own requirements and state laws that may protect you and your job. But then you also need to make sure that you have a viable reason, right, from a therapist or a physician or anything like that, to make sure that you can take the leave. And during that leave, I ended up traveling, to Panama, I think. Yep. So I traveled to Panama, went to see my family, spent some time on the beach, thought about how I wanted to move forward with the case and how I wanted to execute everything that was impending. And then came back for the fight. And that was very beneficial because I don't know that I would have ever considered taking a leave of absence, because to me, in my mind, leave of absence was always tied to like a medical condition or something being wrong with somebody, or somebody needing to be a caretaker or something, or, maternity leave or paternity leave, but never just like, yo, you're about to crash out and you need time off. I never ever considered that. So I'm really grateful that now that I know that that's an option, I can leverage that. And I wish that more people took advantage of that, truly. So let me tell you what also happened during my case. I was laid off from the tech industry. Whew, that was a blow because I was in the midst of the case and I needed the money to pay, but the tech industry is super volatile. So because of that, I had to rearrange how I was doing everything financially. I got severance, and it was a very small amount, but the severance was only enough to cover the insurance that I needed to keep my son and I in good health, and a very small portion of my living expenses. So that's why I ended up having to liquidate my 401k, because I didn't have enough money. That, I think, probably was stress that I didn't see coming. Of course, you don't see a layoff or anything like that coming. And that's why I always caution people when they want to enter into these high-paying industries, that the volatility of those type of industries and in certain roles, it's much higher because you're in a much higher salary bracket. So just keep that in mind. You always want to get the bag, but then you also want to think about what the viability of said industry or line of business or whatever is, so that you do not get caught up in the crossfire. Okay, so at any rate, boom, I got laid off. Got my little bit of severance, was not enough to for me to live off of. So now I'm going through a court case, I'm interviewing for jobs, I'm preparing for trial, and then I'm already not sleeping, and all these things are happening. So imagine all of those things that you got to deal with. And thank God that nothing happened to anybody in my family, or no one died or anything like that, because if anything else traumatic would have happened, I don't know, I would have lost all of my marbles. All of my marbles would have been gone. I would have lost my mind. But what I want to make sure that everybody understands that's going to enter into a court case is that you must be prepared. You must figure out what your coping mechanisms are. You must have a tribe, and you need to understand what wellness initiatives you need to implement in your life to make sure that you're going to be okay. Because while I had all of these things in place for me to survive and thrive mentally, they still were not enough for me to avoid the stress that I was going to endure. It was just not enough. And because of that, I learned new ways on how to care for myself and my body while I'm going through high stress events. Now, let me tell you this. Even though my court concluded back in October of 2024, today we're in March 2025, I am still dealing with some of the remnants of my case because I filed my taxes, and because I had to withdraw from my 401k, I now owe the IRS because that was considered income and it put me in a higher tax bracket, even though all of that money went to pretty much paying for court. Was it worth it? Still, yes. Does it suck to be in this position? Absolutely, but that's okay because the universe, God, everything that I believe in, I know is covering me, and I still feel really good about the decisions that I made to make sure that my son and I were going to be okay and covered, and all of that mess that those people over there brought to me was done. So still dealing with that, still dealing with having to owe money today to the IRS as a result of everything that happened during my 2-year case. So nothing can prepare you for court and the twists and turns. However, if you can just understand where all of your eggs are and understand who you can count on and understand what wellness tools you can use and understand how you respond to things, you can try to get ahead of some of the things that will do you in, okay? So anyway, that's it for all. I just wanted to talk through some of the stressors and some of the experiences that I had. So if you ever find yourself dealing with a court case, a custody battle, a family law issue, or you've experienced something like this or entering into something like this, I hope to be a resource to you, and I'm happy to help in any way I can. Just know that I'm not an attorney. I can only speak from my experience, and I'm happy to share that. But then also, if my content resonates with you, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Okay? And you can also find me on all social media handles that I've shared on the screen. And lastly, if there's anything specific that you want me to cover or touch on, or if you're curious about anything, reach out to me. I am available and willing, always willing to have a discussion, okay? So I will catch you in the next video. I don't know what I'm going to be talking about next week, but I'll get that recorded and out in due time. And thank you so much for rocking with me. Until next time, bye!